We good?
You're live streaming right now.
Oh, am I? Hi, people. We're happy to have you with us. We're waiting for others to come, but the desserts were so good they probably went back to get more. Come on up, Tina. Michelle, come on up. Where's our Max?
Multiple mics. And probably have them live. Might be a little hard to figure out who's on what. But they'll be live. So try not to bang them on the floor or things like that too much. We'll get by. If you make a popping noise, we'll get by.
I'm here. Moderating. Yes, we like having your picture out and about. What am I saying anything about? Donations to the annual conference? Okay, that was covered by part of the basket. All right. Well, welcome upstairs. Big round of applause for all of the cooks and especially those dessert makers. Welcome. We do have a basket that will pass or you can come up to. The donations will go to the Minnesota Annual Conference Emergency Fund. So I'm so excited to have these people here to share stories today. One thing I want you to think about is if there was a part of you that needed to be severed in order to be accepted, how difficult would that be? Hiding a piece so that you can fit in, and how often that happens. Genesis 1:26 says, "Let us make mankind in our image, in the image of God, and God created them." Now, if you tune in tomorrow, I know there's some Eden Prairie people here. These are scriptures for tomorrow. Oh no, you will want to come. We are available online. For just as the body is one and has many members, all the members of the body, though are many, are one body, so it is with Christ. But as it is, God arranged the members in the body, each one of them, as he chose. The eye cannot say to the hand, "I have no need for you," nor again the head to the feet, "I have no need for you." If one member suffers, all suffer together. If one member is honored, all rejoice together. Now you are the body of Christ, individually members of it. For as in one body we have many members, and not all the members have the same function. So we who are many are one body in Christ. Individually, we are members with one another.
He's done that to me while I've heard you too. He is really
Yeah, at first I thought it was a bird because the door's open. Well, let's take a moment and pray. God, as we are gathered here in person and those who are worshiping with us online during this fabulous spring gathering of the Minnesota Reconciling Congregations, we thank you, God, for participation, for learning and opportunities to grow in our faith and in our welcome and inclusion and acceptance in our congregations. Amen. So one of the things that we wanted to, let me introduce first. I'm Linda McCullough. I'm from Eden Prairie United Methodist Church. Mr. Max Richter, Pastor at Good Samaritan. Tina Forster, you can stand up. Yeah. Tina Forster from Moose Lake. Lee Brown, who is the amazing pastor from Holy Trinity where we are today. Roland Henkel. He is part of the staff parish and leadership team up at Moose Lake. Finlayson. Okay. At Finlayson, Minnesota, and he trekked all the way down here today. And our conference superintendent, Michelle Hargrave. So the first question I'd love to have each of you, as you pass the mics back and forth, was your congregation where you're currently serving aware of your sexuality when you came to the church, if you are LGBTQIA or plus? I'll start. Mine was. I came out from the pulpit in 2019 at the church that I was serving after that horrific conference. And so the next church and the next church all knew when I came, and my wife was part of the interview process with the staff parish at Eden Prairie. Don't be shy.
Are you starting at a certain...
No, I think we're supposed to just improv. Backstory, I became assigned to Finlayson and Moose Lake on July 1st, and no, they did not know until we were in a room together and they were interviewing me, and when I started to talk about my family, it was shocking to them. So I was asked to be honest as our process and how it went. So.
Thank you, Michelle. Can you hear me okay? Okay. So it's different being single when you're not bringing a spouse with you. I too had a public coming out service in 2021 when I was serving at Champlin. That being said, our staff parish chair brings greetings to all of you, David Lidekin. He really wishes he could be here today, but had a schedule snafu. When I reviewed this with him, they did not know coming into this. It isn't like there's a box you check. So I think word probably had traveled around, but in the process of our introductory meeting, they were asking about our reconciling work at Champlin. And I said, well, one of the things that happened is that Champlin got behind me as I came out professionally. Now, it just so happens that I'm the third gay pastor that they've had, so I think that might be some kind of a record for Good Samaritan. But again, that's not in the profile. But that's how it all just kind of came up that way. But I think there's still people that may not entirely be sure. I was asked if I had grandchildren the other day.
If you had grandchildren?
Yeah, with one of the folks that had come in from Aldersgate.
Mutually exclusive?
No, and they're not mutually exclusive.
Although we know Pippin is fixed. Anyway.
Correct. She's talking about my dog.
No. And some still may not know. So I don't know. I have never been out in a congregation just coming in saying, this is who I am. Because I'm not partnered I had a long-term relationship in Iowa before I came to Minnesota and went to seminary, but I haven't, can you hear this? Does this work? I haven't since, and so there really wasn't any natural way or reason for me to talk about it. And so no, I just didn't. But I think, people figure it out slowly but surely, I think. But I was asked as part of the ordination process. I came here and I came out of the corporate world, and then I did some nonprofit development work, and then went to seminary, so I'm second career or third career, something like that. And when I was going through the ordination process, we had final interviews at it was then called the North Central Career Development Center, whatever. I was asked outright in that interview, which they're not supposed to do. And I knew enough to know what the answer was that they were looking for, so I said something really cryptic like, oh gosh, what did I say? Something like, wouldn't that be against the rules? Or something like that, yeah. And that was it, yeah.
Michelle, from a conference perspective, or you've sat through many processes with people who are coming into a church, and you may know, what is the conference perspective of sharing that with the congregation?
Well, that's a loaded question. Yeah. Well, no, I've been thinking about it since you offered me this invitation, and I brought you to this church, and actually I didn't know. So I didn't do anything to support you in that fact, because I didn't know and I didn't even think about it.
And if I'd have felt like I needed support, I definitely would have asked for it.
Okay.
But I just
brought you here.
I don't lead with that because
Uh-huh.
it's hard to understand probably, but I don't have a partner.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a person that really embraces labels for the sake of labels.
Sure.
And so it just, if I had a partner, if I was married, it would have been very different.
Yeah. So we've been talking about this, and we're in just this interesting space now where before 2024, before 2019, it was kind of all under the table and wink wink, nod nod, and so we knew things, but we couldn't say it. So we'd sort of just figure out where's going to be safe and who's going to be safe where. I wasn't on the cabinet then. Actually, I wouldn't have agreed to be on the cabinet. I think if Minnesota had done what it did. But in 2019, when Minnesota said, this is how we're going to live, then I felt I could be on the cabinet, and I wouldn't have participated before that. But now, after 2024, it's just a whole new, it's a whole new thing. And Bishop tells us that, although we didn't know this, but Bishop says you can't just ask a congregation, can we bring a gay pastor or not? So we're like, but we really need to know that. We really need to know the answer to that question. But we're not, just like you shouldn't be asked directly, we're not supposed to ask a church directly. So we've developed a whole process to sort that out, because we recognize that obviously there's been opportunities and times where that hasn't gone as smoothly. So shall I tell you about the process? Or
Yeah.
is that what you want?
Yeah.
All right.
We would love to know that.
See if we can read it. I mean, so it's the interesting dance of trying to figure out what can we do with the Book of Discipline, right? I mean, that's what we've been doing for years, and how do we give room for the Spirit of God to do what the Spirit can do? So what we've ended up doing, and I have done this, and I'll be doing this some more this season, is when there's a point at which we have a profiling conversation. So we when there's an opening in a church, so like when Holy Trinity was open, I came and I met with your team here and asked questions about what are you looking for in a pastor, all of that stuff. What are the qualities? What's the missional priorities? All of those things. That's where I'm not supposed to say, could you handle a BIPOC pastor? Could you handle a queer pastor? Could you, and I always say, you better not tell me you want a man or a woman, because we're not doing that. So that's the moment where I have to figure those things out. And so I'm going to read you a paragraph from the Book of Discipline. And I have to say, this is just so exciting to be able to share this particular paragraph from the Book of Discipline. This is number 425. Clergy shall be appointed by the bishop, who is empowered to make and fix all appointments in the episcopal area of which the annual conference is a part. Appointments are to be made with consideration of the gifts and evidence of God's grace of those appointed, to the needs, characteristics, and opportunities of congregations and institutions, and with faithfulness to the commitment to an open itinerancy. Open itinerancy means appointments are made without regard to race, ethnicity, gender, color, disability, marital status, sexual orientation, or age, except for the provisions of mandatory retirement. Oh, now let me read that last sentence again, because we've been working on that one for a long time. Open itinerancy in the United Methodist Church means appointments are made without regard to race, ethnicity, gender, color, disability, marital status, sexual orientation, or age, except for the provisions of mandatory retirement. Annual conferences shall, in their training of staff parish relations committees, emphasize the open nature of itinerancy and prepare congregations to receive the gifts and graces of appointed clergy, without regard to race, ethnicity, gender, color, disability, marital status, economic condition, sexual orientation, or age. The concept of itinerancy is important, and sensitive attention should be given in appointing clergy with physical challenges to responsibilities and duties that meet their gifts and graces. Through appointment making, the connectional nature of the United Methodist system is made visible. So what we've done is, and I did have an experience where I called an SBR chair, because I'd already profiled the church, and I said, I'm just going to read this to you. And then she gasped when I got to that one line. And she said, read that again. And I read it again, and then read it again. And had a lively conversation with me about whether or not I was considering BIPOC clergy, what would it be like to have a younger clergy, what would it be like to have a clergy with disabilities, and I'm listening in that to hear, what was not pulled out in that particular conversation. And so I'm going to be making this a regular part of my profiling conversation. So I read this, and then this is what I say. Oh, also mention the values of the Minnesota Annual Conference, which are rooted in Jesus, grounded in Wesley, inclusive of all, and working for justice. I call it Jesus, John, and justice. But that's a 2019 statement, and those of you in the room worked really hard on that. So after sharing all of that, I say, well, so when we look at the conference values in the Book of Discipline, does anything stand out? And then I listen. And then the next question is, even if we have found a missional match that we think can move your church forward, are any of these deal breakers?
What if they say yes? I'm just thinking about it we're talking about BIPOC people. I've been the first woman pastor in the last 3 congregations that I've served. It's not been a thing here. A couple congregations ago, it was a little rough on them at first, and they got through it. One of the things that I like is for people to get to know me as a person, know me, know who I am, and then, I never tell anybody everything about me right away, ever. So, not even my favorite color, you know what I mean? So, get to know me. But if you're a BIPOC pastor, or obviously, if you're female and the first female, there's if you have a husband or a wife and you're gay, there's no way to not have them know more of who you are when you walk in. So what do you do if it's a BIPOC pastor and they say no? Or a married gay pastor?
Well, it was generally when I'm at the profiling point, that's before we've decided who's going there.
Okay.
And so it's not after we've decided.
Okay.
And that's important in the order of things. So it's
Got it.
figuring out where and part of the struggle. Bishop just reminded me this morning. The cabinet process has to be unconstrained from. We have our responsibility. Board of Ordained Ministry has its responsibility. Churches have their responsibility. But part of our work is to figure out where are people going to be safe.
Yes.
Where are they going to be fruitful? And so part of our work is trying to figure out how to. I mean, so I want to know before I take a queer pastor into a church. I would like to know before I take a queer pastor into a church that it's going to be a good place for them.
Oh, absolutely. And then if for some reason they did say, well, we don't think we could handle a queer pastor, or we don't think we could handle a black pastor, then do you talk to them about equity training?
Well, that would be a good moment for conversation.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the other piece is, at least in conversation in cabinet as we're doing this more, and it's really only been really above board in the last couple of years, really. So we're kind of new in being able to do it this way. Is trying to be clear with the pastor when I go in, if I know that they're queer, is talk to them beforehand and say, I want to know, this is your information. It's not my information, and I'm not going to decide how to share it. I want to know where, what you're going to say, not, I don't mean that in a punitive way. I just want to be ready to support the level of out that they want to be in the process, and support, at what point in the process that would come. And so I try to have that conversation ahead of time. And that's probably a new learning for
If I
cabinet.
can kind of talk about that, because, coming in July,
Can you put the mic
Sorry. I'm not used to this. Is it on? It's not on. Hello? Hello?
Here we go. We'll rotate.
It's a hot seat.
That's a hot seat now?
It's a hot seat.
Okay.
I would love to talk about this because, sorry, there we go. I would love to talk about this because in July we interviewed, and I'm pointing at Roland because he was in that room that day. And for those that know Finlayson, what's the population? 298 people. On Sunday mornings we have anywhere from 15 to 22, maybe, people. I don't know where I'm going with this, right? Because I came from Lindstrom, which again is a small town. They all knew me. In 2019, I left that church. I helped, I volunteered, I did all the stuff. And the pastor at the time was a Lutheran pastor who they had brought in, had been doing good, was very progressive and welcoming me. But then when 2019 happened, the church kind of went a different way. And so he didn't feel like he was welcome much anymore either. And so when he left, I felt abandoned. I didn't know. So I left. And so people at church were like, why did you leave? And I'm like, I don't feel safe. As a single mother of at the time he was like 6, I don't want my son to go through this. And I said, I'm going to leave. When you figure it out, then I'll figure out. And so the day that they decided that they're going to stay, a gentleman who's in his 70s calls me on the phone. He said, we decided, I'll see you Sunday. And so I went back in, and I had been gone for 2 years, And so I actually helped revamp their youth program. At the time, I had no intention of ministry, and Linda's nodding, because I would message her and text her and be like, I don't know. Chris Keene, the pastor there, pushed me and said, I think you're called. She said, would you stop ignoring the call and just do it already? Like, Linda was cracking me up. So here I get put in Finlayson, where I have to decide, how does that work? And so when I went in to the interview, and those of you who've been in the interviewing process, I explained I had a partner at the time. I don't anymore, but I did. And I have a son with my ex-wife who we share custody. I was very open. And I think the looks on the faces of some, not all. Roland's here for a reason. He's amazing. He's one of our lay speakers. He fills in for me when I'm gone. Some people didn't know. I don't look gay, in case you didn't know. So it's hard to guess. I know. I don't look the part. It wasn't until, what would you say, Roland? A couple weeks we got grumbles of people. People left. People said they'll never come back. We lost 8 to 10, continually losing some here and there as well. They're trying to stay, but they don't know that they can. one got up and walked out of the meeting. I mean, that was the hardest part. And so I said to Lori, I called Lori and I'm like, do they not know? Because they're telling me they didn't know. And she's like, it wasn't my place to tell. And I said, okay, going forward, my recommendation is to talk to the candidate. Ask them. You may not want them to know. Having a child and going into a situation, I want them to know. Fully out me, I want them to know. But not everyone is that way, so I think it's on an individual level, like you said. Like, some people are out, some people aren't. So I think it's all individual. So I appreciate this whole meeting today because I think what happened to me, I would not want to happen to other people because it wasn't as smooth as what. And having it be my first, assignment. I go to LLP school next week. So I leave next Sunday and I'll be going to LLP school. So it's kind of one of those things. So I really appreciate having it.
So could you say, and we are paying attention to your experience,
Yeah.
So having a conversation with your superintendent before that meeting, that would have made about this.
Yes, I would, and Linda, I don't know anyone else, I would say as a superintendent or you're thinking about bringing me in or someone else into the church, the candidate that you want to bring to them, you say, Michelle, as we go in, would you like me to disclose ahead of time? And you don't have to be like, just so you know she's gay. Maybe they get their letter, right? Maybe your letter goes early. And then they can see, oh, they're part of the LGBT community. And you don't have to announce it with rainbow flags, but they can see it.
But it would be nice if you had rainbow flags.
Well, I'm not a super rainbow flaggy person. I mean, my house is, but.
I was thinking you look really gay.
I changed my shirt. I do look really gay, although one could question, and I joke because I'm not a collar person, and Linda and I have had this conversation. Like, I'm not wearing a collar. Like, who wears a collar? I'm not wearing a collar. And then we laugh because it's like, there's points that I want to wear my collar.
Yeah.
As a gay person, as I walk through Costco and I have this shirt that I wear when I'm grocery shopping because it's too big and it has all these sheep and they're all different colors. And it says, Jesus loves all of his sheep. And more people in Costco will stop me and say, I love your shirt. Thank you for wearing that shirt. So those are the things. So when I wear rainbows, it's for a reason for other people. I think Roland should share.
Yeah, I would like to hear from Roland if you're comfortable.
He'd get the hot seat. He had no idea he was coming up here today.
Okay. When the district superintendent spoke to us before we had the meeting with the candidate, she did inform us that the candidate she was planning on is a female. That's all we knew. And that she was in real estate.
Oh, yeah, and real estate.
Yeah, because she was going to be a part-time pastor, and she still needed to earn more money to continue paying her bills and all that. So we knew that's what we knew about her before she came to meet with administration council. That night, I watched the faces too when she talked about her partner and her child, and there was some concern in the looks of some of the people. Then the superintendent had Tina leave the room so we could all talk. Nobody brought it up. Nobody said a word about that. And everything seems fine, likable personality, very outgoing. And the superintendent said, well, let's take a vote. And the first person that voted is a very conservative gentleman, older gentleman, and he felt, I can't say no. If there had been conversation about it, he probably would have said no. But he voted yes, and then everybody's like, well, if he voted yes, we can all vote yes. So, we all said, yes, we want her. It's been a change for me. I came from 70 years in conservative Lutheran churches. This is my going on 4th year in the Methodist church here. the Lutheran Church just got to be a little too conservative. We got a new pastor fresh out of the seminary that was very conservative. And actually, I was chairman of the board of elders at that congregation, and basically every other Monday morning I was in his office talking about what he said in his sermon, that this is not the way to do it. And finally, it just got to the point where I can't do this anymore. And I knew one of the lay leaders at the Methodist church in town. I'd known her from high school, and she invited us to attend there, so we went. And we found the congregation to be so welcoming. One of the members that lives next door to us mentioned that we had a visitor this Sunday, and mentioned my wife and I, and everybody came and shook our hands. And it was like, really? We didn't do this in the Lutheran church. But so it was a change for me to see a woman in a lay leadership position, leading worship, preaching. That took a little getting used to, and then to have a prayer pastor, female, it's like, oh, okay, I think I can live with this. As a matter of fact, one of the members, by that time I had become, by the time Tina came, I had become one of the lay leaders. One of the members wrote an email to me saying, what do you think about this situation? Said, she's like, when we go to Florida in the winter, we attend a church there, and they said, no, not going to be part of that. And she said, so what's your opinion? And I said, well, I can understand your concern coming from the Lutheran background, where you would never see a woman pastor, you would never see a gay woman pastor in the conservative synods that we belong to. And I said, I understand that, but I said, I believe that God puts people where he puts them because he has a reason for them being there. And she didn't like that. She and her husband did leave the congregation, but there are a couple people that at this point say, I'm fine with her as long as she doesn't start preaching her lifestyle. And it's like, okay.
How long would do that?
But, it's been a challenge because both of the other lay leaders, the two women that were lay leaders when we joined the church, have left the church. It was really disappointing to see that, frustrating to see that happen. But, we go on, we carry on. And as I've told Tina, I support her 100% in all she does.
Can we go to the screen that has the questions? I have questions here, but the ones that were published. What are some concrete ways that you can live into inclusiveness, and what are the ways that are not helpful? What are some of the concrete ways that you can live into inclusiveness? This would be for a congregation and individuals within the congregation. And what are the ways that are not helpful? I'll start. Only when I'm really tired. I'm gonna flip it. I'm gonna start with what's not helpful. What's not helpful, if you've been voted on that yes, they want you, and you have said yes to that appointment. I had an experience with one congregation where the poor guy that was the head of the SPRC was getting battered with questions. So he would apologize when he would call and say, sorry, I have some more questions. But they knew from the information that I was married. They wanted to know where I got married and how long ago it was, which I don't think probably happens to necessarily, I don't know. Yes. And what's really not helpful, and this is of these questions that I think are really important for congregations to, when the pastor is coming into a church, from my perspective, you've got to have people that have the pastor's back. So when someone who is in leadership in the congregation, when maybe giving goes down a little because, you know, some people aren't coming anymore or they're not going to give because they have a pastor that's queer, having someone point out to you they don't give anymore or they don't come anymore because of you. Now that stings as a pastor and as a human being, but there's got to be people willing in leadership to come alongside and maybe be a barrier for some of that, because there's enough of this that happens that calling some of those behaviors out would be really helpful. So it doesn't just come down to the pastor having to defend themselves and their calling. I mean, Roland is a gift to Tina to be able to give that sort of support. So to me, when we say we're an inclusive congregation, okay, let's see it happen. I don't have any of my SPR folks here today, but they did share with me that when they were having the discussion about it, having met myself and Kate, one of them said, well, why would we invite this kind of trouble? And others on the SPRC said, we're a reconciling congregation. Why wouldn't we invite an LGBT pastor? So those are sort of the things that have to be navigated, but it really takes the congregation and the leadership to step into that role so that it doesn't just fall on the pastor having to, you know, it's hard sometimes, right? And then when you have people who are so willing to, when people are so willing to point out your faults and your faults are about your humanity, it sucks. No, it works. Yeah.
And I think it'd be something good for you, Michelle, to ask of the interview committee if they're willing to stand behind the pastor.
I think SPRC is the exact spot in the church that needs to play this role, and at the same time, it's important for SPRC to not overprotect, but to stand alongside. And that's a different posture, if you know what I mean. But I have worked with churches where that conversation has been clear. Is, you know, we're going to say yes to, you know, whatever this is, and we need to own that together and stand with the pastor. That's the location in the church that I think is most critical to do that.
Well, I mean, maybe I'm a little bit more hardcore about this, but this congregation was reconciling when I came in. But the last two, I was pastor when they became reconciling. And the first same-sex weddings I did were at Faith St. Anthony. And I heard of other churches that said they were reconciling churches, but that they didn't do same-sex weddings, or the pastor wasn't. And I thought, well, but you're not a reconciling church then. I'm sorry, but you're just not. I mean, I don't know how you could say we welcome and affirm everybody equally, but we don't minister to you in the same way that we minister to you. To me, I guess I feel like I would at least, I mean, you can have the conversation, but don't fly a rainbow flag and say you're reconciling. You're clearly not there yet if you're having trouble with this.
I think along that same line, it's easy to say we're reconciling because we have people who have queer kids or queer grandkids, or we have queer members. But it takes it a step further when you decide that you're going to step up to the plate and say yes to having a queer clergy. So I agree with exactly what you're saying. But I think that that's, and that's one of the ways I think MRC can help, right? Is having people come in and, go through that, because Michelle can't do it all.
What?
You could.
I have a question. When you bring someone into a leadership position, so could be clergy, could be music ministry, it could be whatever, into the church, you're bringing them into a particular community. But there's also the larger community, maybe not too much larger if it's Finland's. But there's a larger community in which that church and that congregation sit. How do you negotiate, maybe that's not quite the right word, but what's the choreography for becoming part of that larger community?
I'll answer that. So
Okay.
we'll skip ahead. We have Finlayson, but I also have Moose Lake. So I have two churches. Moose Lake, Roland's helped me. The day that Renee Good got shot, I was in South Minneapolis. Being a realtor, I travel all over the state. I get a call from someone in Moose Lake who does not attend our church. She's a community member. And she said, hey, I know that you're kind of open. Would you do a prayer vigil tonight? And I said, I can be there in about 4 hours. I said, I can't be there any sooner. And so we drive there. I drive there, and we had 27 people. Roland came, of course, to support me in that, to have extra people there, to pray with people, to talk with people. And so as that, we continued it now. We're on the second Tuesday of every month. It's called a peace gathering. And the third one, a lady walked in the door. She walks up, this is a very old church, walks up the steps. I'm dressed in regular clothes, no rainbows, just saying. And she said, can you tell me if this church loves the gays? I looked at her and I said, I sure hope so, because I'm the pastor and I am one. And laughing aside, she fell into my arms and started crying. So she is an LGBT member in Moose Lake, and they didn't know there was someone up there. And so then now we've had new congregation members coming in Moose Lake as we reach the community. It's not about church on that Thursday night. It's not about what you believe, because the one Sunday it was a Lutheran, we had a Catholic, we had a Muslim, atheist, and spiritualist. I was counting all the different beliefs that were in the pews. And I said, this is what it's about. So when you say that, it's about reaching out, not just queer people, but all people. Because it doesn't matter. So doing that, but not doing it in their face, right? We didn't say, we didn't have a rainbow flag, we didn't have a progressive flag, we just said peace. Everyone's welcome, right? And so that's kind of how we reached out. And you've attended several of them, and now we have an ex-Jehovah's Witness who now attends our church. And she showed up at the ad council. I'm like, thank Lord. Everybody needs more ad council members, right? Like, especially when you say Moose Lake, a population of 2,700, but most of them are incarcerated. So there's 2 federal institutions in Moose Lake. They count them as population. And so we actually are a small community. We have anywhere from 8 people, maybe, to 20 on a Sunday. It was 8 when I got there. And now it's creeping up. But that's how it's done. Except for when he's there, they don't show up. I'm like, please go, he's amazing. I refer to him like my dad, right? Because he has been that emotional support, like a father.
It's beautiful.
We do look at demographics when we're making appointments. We have mission insight information, and we do. We appoint immigrant clergy around the state and queer clergy, and we do I mean, we do have those conversations and arguments sometimes. You know, somebody can be safe there or not. And we also try not to make decisions for people, but yeah.
Who will be a viable leader in your congregation to help respond to questions and concerns so that the clergy doesn't have to defend their right to be appointed?
And if it's not the SPR chair, then what are you doing?
Yeah, exactly. It really does. I think it's so important to have a supportive SPR. I think it's so important. The head of Team Lee is right back there running the soundboard, and and Carol's on SPR too. But that's the committee that is empowered by our discipline. Mm-hmm. So that's what I would say. SPR.
So, as you say this, I am thinking about this question, and the thing that really struck me is that not only is it SPRC, it's all of the leaders that you have elected onto, for your church. Also, all your lay leaders in your church. You know, the church that I go to, we're lucky because we have about 4 or 5 that are lay leaders. But honestly, it should be all of them that are supporting your minister and the ministry that you have and buffering whatever is going on. So even if they may not be aware of everything, because all the lay leaders do not know what happens at SPRC. However, they should be on board enough to be able to support the minister. And if somebody in the congregation is, saying, well, I'm pulling my funds until we get this worked out, whatever it is they are dealing with, whether it's LGBTQ thoughts or the fact that you need to do something to the church building or change the church time, when you worship. I just think those are the important things that need to be addressed by all the members, all the leadership. Thank you.
Do you think that typically that's the case? It
depends on how big your church is, I think.
Okay.
But whenever you have a church on the smaller side, then yes, I do think all the leaders.
Okay.
We're still on the small side, so I feel like all of our leaders are.
Anybody else up here have anything? Okay. I love this last question here. Does your staff parish or pastor parish team members have ways to communicate why we accept a whole pastor as well as the other members of the church? And that kind of goes back to the beginning when I talk about if there's one part of you that you have to keep in the closet or that you, sever a piece off so that you can be accepted. And I think that that's so important. Whole pastor. It's not just the pastor, but the whole pastor.
I can think about early on, so I'm finishing up my second year at Good Samaritan, and our staff parish chair and the whole team using he would talk about me bringing the fullness of who I am. That simple phrase. And how they were already responding and the energy that's there, that was already very apparent to me, but it's great to have those things said out loud. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And there's this ripple effect in the whole congregation. I'm sitting here thinking, it's not happenstance that of the new people that are coming we just merged with Aldersgate and St. Louis Park, but there's new people that aren't from either branch of the church. I'm like, young lesbian couple in their 30s, gay couple in their 40s, 2 high schoolers that happen to be a couple that are women, that are the new people that come. This becomes a part of the culture of the whole community.
Mm-hmm. And any church that doesn't take the whole of who you are, Max, is going to be missing something.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, when you said the whole of who you are, that just hit me. You know, I mean, I've known you for 30 years, and I just think the whole, I mean, you know Max, right? The whole of who you are.
Why would you settle for part of a max when you could have the whole max?
I mean, and that's, you know, I mean, I'm saying that out of great affection for him, but that's the feeling for everyone.
It was like that for a long time.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I guess I won't
It's
tell
not
the
all-
story,
not
but it
all
was
done.
like that for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and we, yeah.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of harm in the church,
Yes.
and you carry it in your bodies.
Oh, yeah. Some of you heard me preach about that.
Yeah. And Tina, I'm sorry that you have so recently carried that.
It is
For
part
the
of
church.
journey. And what we say is when you get in the situation that we're in, and we've talked about it, and Roland will text me late at night, and I'll text him, I'm like, I know why I'm in Moose Lake now. So after that day, I'm like, that's why I'm here. Or he'll text me, that's why you're here. Because of little things, although there's struggles, the wins are more than the struggles.
Okay, here's a question that's not on the board. If we know, right, that can be hard, what are ways that SPRT, SPRC, or the people in your church who are supporting you, what can they do to support you better so that you know that you're being supported, that it's not just a nod or handshake, but the real sense of support?
I think it's a really good question, but I think that when, certainly for Tina, this is very recent. But Max, how long have you been clergy?
It's 99.
Since
26 years.
26 years. And that's a long time, 26 years. And so there are some gay clergy, especially who were partnered when they came in that long ago. The pain was enormous. I mean, our history was very different than it is now. And so I think it's just important to remember that we're still carrying that pain with us and will be for a long, long time.
When I started the candidacy process, I was with, my mentor was a gentleman who lived his entire ministry career in the closet. And one of the things he told me the very first meeting was, you need to decide whether you can live in the closet, because I know I have shortened my life because of the choices I made to live into my call. And that was a long conversation for weeks at our house. So.
Oh, I'm a congregation member at Good Samaritan. Just to add to Max's comments, I think SPRC did a very good job of assimilation, where there were lots of get-to-know Max type meetings. Pat Decas-Becerra's here, she hosted one, so sat around a table and, we got to talk to Max and get to know him, and also those 26 years where, people knew Max coming in too, and, seen him at Pride, seen him at other events, and it's, it does take some time, but it does make a big difference if you have a supportive SPRC and a lot of other people. So you kind of build that base and then work from that base to support the pastor coming in. And it's been good.
Thank you.
So, thanks.
I think it's a big difference too about where you grew up,
Oh, yeah.
right?
Oh, yeah.
So, backstory, Methodist, town of 64 people. That's where I grew up, in Illinois. And our church was Methodist, right? And then I commuted 12 miles to school where it was 1,000 people. And when I came out, I was 30. Because you couldn't be gay. I have an ex-husband. Because you can't be gay.
Right.
My dad no longer talks to me because I'm gay. My church that I grew up in left the Methodist church. So when I say, helping people and maybe you don't understand, you just go with it. Each day is a new day, right? Each day is a new day. And so me coming from the background, and it's sad to say, like the trauma that I suffered as a kid, the trauma that I suffer still makes me still be in Finless and in Moose Lake. Because if I was born in Minneapolis and I was supported and surrounded by rainbow flags and everybody loved me, and then I get there, it would be a huge culture shock. But I think it's a difference of who gets put into those smaller churches and who gets put into those small areas, or maybe because our churches are not reconciling, and they will not be. I mean, I say that, we talked about it earlier, it won't be accepted to reconcile, neither church, and that's okay. I know it sounds weird, but that's okay, because if I can still be there and they can still get experience from someone who's gay, they met someone that's gay, oh my gosh, like I'm a little bit trickling, a little bit here and there to the community and to the church community.
I can say as one, so I grew up in rural South Dakota, Madison, northwest of Sioux Falls in the mid '80s, and I want to thank you for sharing your gifts in a rural environment, because that these kids that are watching this happen now will see that there are possibilities for them they may never could have imagined. So thank you for being that witness.
Any other questions? Yeah.
I've got the mic. Max, is this on?
Yeah.
I can't tell.
Close to your mouth.
Max, I know that, and you mentioned it earlier, that you had this coming out celebration when you were at Champlin, and I think you shared that with the MRC folks. It was really powerful. Is this something that I guess there are really two questions. How did you decide to do that? What kind of support did you have, and is this something you would recommend to other clergy to consider?
It's Jennifer Galovich from First United Methodist Church of the St. Cloud region. I can say the whole thing. Love First. It's a big question. So, as everyone has echoed up around, and this is very unique for each person. As an extrovert living in COVID, let's go back a few years. For me, it was really important to have my worship, my community around me, and all of that. The way it's a much longer story, but one of the gifts of COVID for me was that, and because of what happened in 2019, when we as a conference said we're going to move forward, that I had a venue, even though people had begun to come out. I'm trying to remember the timing with Linda's. It was maybe right before, I don't know. It was like one by one we started to, and I thought, because I couldn't take it anymore. And I needed for my own spiritual, mental, physical well-being. For me, that was an incredibly powerful moment to stand in that. And our staff parish was amazing. We did do some ally training then to follow up on it too. And this was all online. But since we couldn't be together physically, it was that much more important that we did that. And yet it was still new enough where we had to go back and make sure, okay, is this all right? And we're in between bishops and all of this sort of stuff. But I had the blessing not only of the Champlin congregation standing with me, but I had asked friends of mine that had been friends from college for, now coming up on 40 years, other colleagues from other denominations that I had been a part of their ordination service, and they got to be part of mine by putting a video together. And it's something I'll cherish for my whole life. So that's something each clergy person would have to decide for themselves. For me, it was incredibly, it was a life, completely life-changing moment for me. Because we took this step forward. I'd be happy to talk with you more about that.
as the queer people get younger and younger, and you get past our age, I feel like that's not going to be an issue. Coming out will never happen again. I mean, maybe somewhere in South Dakota and Illinois.
Right.
But kids now are different. You know, they don't have to identify they, them. I will tell you, as a queer person, I'm like, what? I mean, it was LGBT, right? That was it. And like all these things, and even as a queer person, I'm like, huh? Now they're like, they don't care. Like, I have an 11-year-old. They don't care. They are who they are. Why do we have to label? Like you said, why do they have to label? They probably won't even be labeling it in 20 years from now. You know, I pray and hope that we don't have to go through this in 20 years from now.
I hope it was so powerful just to go through it with you as your friend, Max. And I mean, I would never have been able to do that for myself, but I had a very, very different experience than you had because I've had long-term relationships with men, with women, and I don't really claim a label, and there's just a lot wrapped up in that for me personally. So, but the fact that you did that, and that I was able to be your friend and walk through, I mean, it impacted me in ways that you'll never know. And I just think you're so brave, and it was so beautiful. And the change in you before and after, it was, because we got the whole Max. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Lee was back in town for the funeral of a dear colleague who had died. And I asked if she wanted to come to Champlin for the Sunday afterwards. And then you came and brought a word to the Champlin community about being a part of this, so that helped them understand the greater connectionalism of all of that. And I remember you saying when you walked in the building, like the building felt different.
It did.
Itself.
And I preached in that. I was appointed, my first appointment was in Anoka. And so I had preached at Champlin before, and it did. Everything felt different. You could feel the love.
I think you said it felt like joy.
Yeah.
That's super gay. Maybe with the disco ball instead.
Any other questions? Go ahead.
First, thank you all so much for being here today and for sharing so much from your heart, and it's just such a powerful witness. The work is not done. What is our growing edge as a conference, as churches, as clergy supporting one another to support queer clergy in Minnesota? What's the work that we still need to do? What lies before us?
This right here. This. I think it's this. The fact that you're here.
We do have legislation that will be at the annual conference for any leaders. We know that the trans community especially has gone through hell. And we will have legislation supporting and hoping that our conference will get behind that. Judy got that in just in time. But that's one of the ways, is really paying attention and being as supportive as you can be.
Thank you for please have in mind and pay attention to trans people and what they're going through right now. I did, when Max said Lee was back, I was in Iowa Annual Conference. I served down there for like 9 years. And there are people coming to Minnesota from Iowa because trans people no longer have civil rights in Iowa. It's a really horrible thing that's happening, and we need to make sure that we are ready to welcome trans folks and to protect them, because I had, in my youth group down there, there was one non-binary youth and 2 trans youth in that congregation. And one of the hardest things I wanted to come home to Minnesota Conference for a long time, wanted to be back with my friends. One of the hardest things was leaving the youth group knowing that they would be safe. And I got very lucky just in who was appointed, and I knew her well, the person who was appointed into the church after me. And when I found out it was her, it was like, because I was terrified for them.
I'm a mother of a transgender daughter, and so even though Minnesota's pretty safe, I'm still doing calculus every day.
Absolutely.
Is it safe? Is it safe? Is it safe? How long is it going to be safe? What are we going to do when it's not safe? I do have great hope for Minnesota to continue to be safe. But yes, we are a place, and we have transgender clergy from around the connection that interview with us, seeking to come here. So helping churches be ready for a gay pastor is one thing. And then I think working on welcoming a transgender pastor is a whole another step. So I think that is one of the leading edges that we have. And because Minnesota is the way it is, we are an attractive place to be.
Get out and vote.
So the next time your superintendent, you get a call from your superintendent saying, hey, we have an opportunity for you. What's something you hope that congregation has done to be able to welcome the whole you ahead of time before you're there?
I can tell you that coming to Eden Prairie after being in a church that was not reconciling and the things that I dealt with on a daily basis there, I love Eden Prairie for the people, but also for their theology, the progressive nature, the willingness to support. My wife and I've had a rough few months, and the support and love that we have received from that congregation is amazing. And I don't think that I would have felt that same thing had I been in some previous places. So, having had them do the work in advance made it, not that we're not continuing to do the work, but having had them do the work before I was there was less weight on my shoulders because they stood for what they stood for. So, yeah. And I don't want to call Michelle. I love my people.
Yeah, I love Holy Trinity, and I'm much, much younger than I look. I'm, yeah, anyway, don't appoint me somewhere else, please. I'm not budging. Thank you, thank you. What do they call this, the bookend appointment? I hope, I pray.
To come back to Mariah's question too for a second, I'm thinking not only with trans realities, but I think we're still learning a lot about intersectionality.
Yes.
And if we have, okay, so say we're going to bring in, I'm thinking of a neighboring Lutheran congregation where, she's a black lesbian, and there's a lot of layers to that. As a white person, I will never understand. But it's paying attention to these kinds of things too. Everyone is so unique. It's, yeah, I mean, there's so much. And I'm sure it's been a long time since I've served on the district committee on ordained ministry, but all these questions and how you find safe mentors for candidates, so that we can help make a path for other people. And I could talk about that for quite some time too.
The intersection part is really important because right now I'm mentoring a black clergy man in the process. And, we're used to, this is Minnesota Reconciling Ministry, so we've been talking about LGBTQ for a long, long time, but it's the same road. Yeah. It's the same road for our clergy of color. So
I think that's why I think that what Minnesota named in 2019 is so important to say. It's rooted in Jesus, right? I get the rooted and grounded mixed up. Rooted in Jesus, grounded in Wesley. That's really important. And then doing the work on inclusion and doing our anti-racism work.
Yes.
And those things together are so important. And when we interview clergy from around the world to come to Minnesota, we ask about those values every single interview. So we're always asking people. I'm on the cabinet. That's just the standard question. Here's our values. Tell me where you are with this. But that framework, I think, just has so powerfully shaped our grounding and the road that we are on.
I think I have a question for you guys, and maybe Roland falls into this. What can we as queer clergy do to support you? Because although we might be uncomfortable sometimes, you might be a little uncomfortable too. I remember when I came out, my ex-wife and I went back home. My grandma was in her 80s, and she scratches her head because, you know, my ex-wife has the faux hawk and it kind of looks like Linda. And is she your husband? Like, my grandma couldn't grasp it. She loved me, and she loved my wife, but she didn't understand. She was like, I don't understand. Is it a girl? Is she your husband, or why? I don't understand. What do I call her? And I said, she wears girls' underwear. She's a girl. So, like, how do we help you guys, right? Like, whether you're queer or straight or you've never met anyone who's gay. Some people in our church, I feel like, seriously have never met a gay person.
That they know of.
That they know of, right. That they know of, but they don't know. And so they're gradually learning a little bit and a little bit. So what can we do for you to help you feel comfortable? Not that it's our job, but it's the same, right? You're asking us what you can do to make us feel comfortable. How can we help you?
I think the underwear part is a sermon.
I find that hearing your stories, that, you know, I grew up as a Lutheran, ELCA, and when the Lutherans decided to, you know, open up to accepting gay clergy and doing weddings, there was a part of me that goes, should I go back to the Lutheran church? And then I thought, the reason I left the Lutheran church didn't have anything to do with that, and those reasons were still there. And I also didn't know when I came to the Methodist church about, you know, what was in the Book of Discipline. But it's hearing the stories. And after the 2019 General Conference, that my husband and I were there as observers, and, you know, and there's this part of me that was going, okay, you know, can I stay? But then I looked around at the clergy I knew, who I knew were gay, and they were staying. And I thought, okay, I am staying in this because I want to support them, and I want them to get to the place where they can bring the whole person. And so for me, it's that hearing the stories and knowing how you have been affected that really helps me to hopefully become a better ally and to continue this work, and knowing that, you know, we are not finished, that there are many Methodist churches in Minnesota and beyond that needing to learn that just because somebody is queer, they're not, you know, they breathe the same air, they have the same hopes, and they need to have the same opportunities.
I just wanted to say that as a pastor, the best thing you can do for me is to preach the gospel as you've lived it, and just let that filter through. And that's what you're there for. That's why I go to church. That's what I need. And I agree 100% that the stories are powerful, but really what you're there for is to say, come, follow, and point the way on the path. That's the most important thing.
Good job, Carol.
I think you can be who you are, and by being who you are, you show your congregations that you're just like them. We're all the same. We're all human beings. And that's one things I'll never understand. I'm a recovering Catholic, and and I found this church, and I found Pastor Lee, and I'm so grateful to be here. And what brought me here are the people that are in this congregation and Pastor Lee. It's so different from anything I've ever experienced. It's so open and loving. I sent a note to Pastor Lee a couple of weeks ago and told her, she was talking in the sermon about love, and when I read books on NDEs, they talk about going to heaven and the love that permeates you completely. And when I'm in this church with the congregation and Pastor Lee, you feel it. It's just here. So I think being who you are is the greatest gift you can give any of your congregations.
I would like to invite Pastor Dennis, Alexander, and Mariah to come up front and pray for us. So I didn't put one of you on the spot, I put you both on it.
Every other word, Dennis?
Let me film that.
You start, I'll close. How about that?
Let's pray. Gracious and loving God, you have been very present with us this day, as you have been since the very beginning, holding, guiding, comforting, reassuring, but most importantly, loving. No matter what the world has ever said about us or done to us, you have never let us go. And it is your grace and your love that allows us to rise in the morning and to head out the door and to be reassured that when we gather in the evening, that we will have lived meaningfully, hopefully, helpfully, lovingly in your ways.
Gracious God, thank you for this opportunity to gather this day in community, in our connectional spirit as United Methodists, to celebrate the boldness of your creative design of all people as beloved. I give thanks for those who so boldly and faithfully shared their stories and shared of their hearts this day, and for the call that you have placed upon them to serve your people here and now. And I give thanks for Minnesota Reconciling Community, for all those gathered here as leaders and witnesses, for all the churches they represent, and for all the ministry that takes place across our conference to help lift up our inclusive vision, and ask that as we go forth to carry on this work, we do so reminded that we do not go alone, that we have one another, and that we have your good news to carry us forward in proclaiming a gospel of love and welcome and justice. Be with us as we turn our hearts towards those who need a place to land, who need to know of your great welcome and love, and help us to pave a path for those who will come after us, so that this message might continue to ring out and we might all together build up your kingdom of welcome and joy. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you both.
Can I just say, we didn't say this during, but when we became reconciling at Faith St. Anthony, I think there were 2 people that voted against, but I didn't come there and that process was started by Dennis Alexander years and years before I got there. And we had the vote there. I mean, those of you who are straight pastors who have led your congregations in the way of love, the people that follow you are really grateful. Thank you, Dennis.
And I don't know if you all know Dennis's story, but he did the first reconciling church in Minnesota, and probably's been involved in a lot. I know he helped us in when I was serving in Columbia Heights, and they became reconciling. Dennis was the one who came and did that. So, Dennis, for your leadership, thank you. Well, I believe that our time is coming to an end. Carol, would you like to add anything to that, other than the basket is still up there if someone would like to give to the annual conference?
That was what I was going to add. We have the basket up here to give to the annual conference. Just as a member of this church, I want to thank you all for coming today. We weren't sure if it was just going to be the people from here or if other people would show up, so it was really nice to see you. I thought this was absolutely a beautiful morning, afternoon, and just the heart that came from the people on the congregation up here. What they offered to us was beautiful and important, and I think we all felt it in the room. So thank you. But again, you know, it's church. It's always money. It's always. But this is for the annual conference emergency fund. Obviously, we need that. So Judy's going to take care of it for me. And thank you very much. And I don't know if Lee has anything else to say or anybody else, but we're good.
Room on the leadership team. We can use help.
If you are like me and not someone who carries a lot of cash, you can also give online directly to the annual conference. If you go to the donate tab, it's one of the options available there. Thank you all for coming. If you missed the announcement earlier, if your church is doing any Pride festivities that are not the Twin Cities Pride, please let Deb know. If you did not grab a sheet and don't know Deb's email, you can also email Minnesota Reconciling Congregations, and we will forward that to Deb so that we can celebrate all of the work that you're doing on our website so that people know what's going on.